Hello and welcome to this introductory video for my legacy project. The video you're about to see was originally created for Save Your Photos Month, a service of an organization called the Photo Managers, which each September they present a series of instructional videos on family photos and history. And I thought it'd be a good way to start things off and begin to give you an idea of some of the things you can do and how to start preparing. My legacy project started a few years ago as a way of putting together pictures of my family with some of the stories I knew about or had been told about, and I posted these to my website, and it was a lot of fun. But I realized that at some point I was not addressing a very important component of the process, which was how to best preserve and archive these pictures and stories so they could be passed on and exist for future generations. We are now in the digital age, and both our photos and videos are all digital, as well as many of the documents and other items we use to record our lives. Historians are grappling with ways to preserve these things. They even have a term to describe the risks of the digital age. They call it the digital black hole. These are important challenges as media becomes obsolete and hard drives fail. How are we going to preserve our digital history? So if historians are seeking answers to preserving our global history, how do we preserve our family history with the massive amounts of digital files we are accumulating, along with the inevitable deterioration of the aging prints, film, and paper records we've been attempting to keep safe? So I'm setting out to answer some of these questions for myself so that I can help others to preserve their family histories, photos, and documents. And I thought it'd be interesting to document and record my process a bit and present it for others to see as I explore and seek the best answers and solutions. So in the following months, I'll post new videos about my progress to my website and in my monthly newsletter. So here's a brief summary of the process, at least as I see it now going forward. I'm going to organize and dedupe my digital photo collection, and then organize and scan older prints, film, and slides. I'm going to collect and organize artwork, documents, and records, and digitize that too. And then I'm going to create a library, and from that library, create and curate a legacy collection, which I'm going to talk about in the video you're about to see. I'm going to create projects from this legacy collection, which include things like printed albums, personal video documentaries of family members, something I'm really excited about, and I talk about in the video as well. Create some family trees and timelines, and then upload to archival platforms. Now, I'm always going to welcome your feedback and suggestions. My contact info, as well as some of the other resources I mention in the video, will be found at the end of it. So here's my video on how to preserve your family history, and I'll see you on the other side. What is a legacy? A legacy is what you leave behind. It's your family history and the items that help tell that story that are passed on so future family members and others can know and learn and appreciate it. It's really the most important story we can tell. And just like estate planning, preserving and passing on a life story and family history is a vital and important part of one's legacy, and it also requires the same care and consideration. There are so many creative options that you can use to tell and preserve a family history, both digital and analog. But where do you start? So this presentation will show some of the options that are available, maybe help you lay out a roadmap to navigate the process ahead, and ask some of the questions to consider, like, how do you want to tell your life story and family history? How can you preserve it and pass it on for future generations? What items do you already have, and what do you still need to collect or create? And do you want to do it yourself, or get help, or maybe a little of both? So this is an area I have started to explore for myself and for my clients. I thought at first I would present this session as a how-to list of things to do, but I think I'm going to tell you about some of the things I did, things I'm doing, and things I plan to do. I thought maybe better to hear about what someone else is doing than a list of all the things you should be doing. The last thing I want to do is overwhelm anybody, and I thought just talking a bit about my journey might be more helpful in the long run. If you start to feel some anxiety just thinking about this, like time's running out or a sense of urgency, that's okay. Take a deep breath and remember this is going to be a process, not an event. It will take a while to create what you want. And even then, it may always be a bit of a work in progress, and that's fine. In the short time we have here, I won't be able to go into too much detail. And if you're just starting out on this journey, hopefully this inspires you to start thinking about it, asking yourself some questions, and then starting your own plan. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, there is no one way of doing this or any right way of doing it either. You get to make this your own because it's your own story. This is a photo of my mother and my son shortly after he was born in 2005. And this is how a legacy got started for me. I had always understood the importance of family history. We always had a lot of family photos. But now I was aware that there was someone to pass this down to, someone who would inherit our family history. This poor little guy had no idea all the responsibility I was ready to unload on him. But judging by the usual interest and enthusiasm that most kids and teens have for this sort of stuff, I'm probably still going to have some years to pull this together. I don't want to pretend that I jumped right into it and made tons of progress. I was too exhausted by being a new father to do too much, but I did have some awareness based on the fact that I was an older dad, and so I did two important things early on that I'm very grateful I had the wherewithal to do. First, I did a few video interviews of my mother, asking her about her childhood growing up in Brooklyn, how she met my father, who had passed away at an early age, and other details and stories about her early life. Then I did some interviews with me, talking about the same sort of stuff. My thinking was I wanted my son to see me while I was still relatively young, because as he gets older, so do I. Video interviews are one of the best ways to preserve memories. You get to hear and see the person talking about their life. And as you'll see later, the audio can be used separately for narration over stills and other documents for video chapters for that person. You can hire someone to do a really nice professional job with great quality video and audio, but it's not hard to do it yourself. Most digital cameras offer great video quality, and our smartphones do as well. And you can buy a decent, inexpensive microphone and come up with nice quality audio. Here are some tips. Prepare your questions ahead of time. Don't zoom in too close or too far away. Ask your questions, but then have your subject repeat the question before answering. That way you can cut out your voice if you want to in the final edit. Use a tripod or place your camera on a steady surface. Interviews should never look jumpy. Find a place your subject will be comfortable in and use natural light if you can. You can bounce light in with a professional reflector or just use a large piece of white cardboard to fill light on your subject's face if necessary. Don't try to do everything in one session. It can be exhausting for some people to reminisce in such detail, but if they are energized by it, go for it. Telling a family history can go back as far as you want to, or as far as you can. I am fortunate to have a better than average collection of old photos in my family, as my grandfather was a professional photographer, and we had a few advanced amateurs as well. I also had a nice collection of documents and letters, but I had to accumulate many of them from other family members, either by asking for them or by inheriting them. The intention on my part was to gather as much as I could. I was creating a library. Now, this is my photo mess that I took a number of years ago when I received a large bunch of stuff of my mother's, and I thought I would record it in this state for posterity. Create a library. A library is a place you go to get things from and do things with. And that's just what I've been doing. The first step was to collect as much as I could, photos, videos, and documents, and put them in my photo library. Now, I use both Apple Photos and Adobe Lightroom, but any good photo catalog will do as long as it has certain basic features that I will talk about. Most of us already have a photo catalog we are using for our photos. Now we're going to give it purpose. Let's just talk about this for a bit. The important thing to understand is that this catalog, this photo library you are putting everything into, it will never be for anyone but you. It is your library. And what you eventually pass down will not be this library of thousands and thousands of images and videos and other stuff. What you pass down will be a carefully curated and much smaller archive that will ultimately tell a story. More on that in a minute. But just think about it. At the rate we are taking pictures, many photo libraries are reaching into the hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions. Can you imagine the look on your children's face if you ever tried to give that to them? So this first step is to aggregate as much as I can into my photo library. Then I need to identify the images and videos and files that I want to use to create a legacy collection within my library. So in my photo catalog, my library, I need a way of doing this identification. Now, I do this for the files already in the catalog, as well as the new images I will take, and scans of older prints and such that I will be adding. Now, I hate to admit it, but my own library is not as organized as I would like it to be. But that hasn't stopped me from identifying images and other files that I want for my legacy collection. Every catalog has several methods of identification, such as star ratings, favorites, keywords, and virtual albums and collections. I like to use all of these methods. Now, I'll give images a 5-star rating or mark it as a favorite. Then I will create and put them in a virtual album or collection. Different catalogs use different terms, but it's just a way of organizing sets of images. Once in a collection or album, I will add a keyword such as legacy collection to them. And I can of course add more precise keywords such as names, places, and events too. There's also another way of finding these images without scrolling through your entire catalog. It's called using metadata. Even if your photos are not organized into folders, you can use certain tools to help identify images with such features as facial recognition. This tool allows the catalog's AI function to identify faces and, in some cases, things and pets and other objects. Images with GPS coordinates can be displayed on a map within the catalog. Most digital cameras and mobile phones will stamp images with date and time taken, and the catalog uses that info to chronologically sort your images, and it can be a great method of finding events. These are all great ways of finding people, places, and events, and each catalog has versions of these tools and features that you should get acquainted with. So now that I've started the identification process, I can start to create my legacy collection. I personally want to keep my legacy collection as tightly edited or culled as I can. I will be using these images and files to tell stories in a number of ways, and while I want a nice selection to choose from, too many will make later choices more difficult. I will be going back to this legacy collection for many of the projects I will be doing and creating in the future. I don't want to have to sort through thousands of images each time. I probably want a few hundred files in there that I can access and find easily. I think of each photo as a sentence, as if I was writing the story. How is the story best told? I don't want too many sentences. I don't want too few. And one thing I tell my clients is to think about how many photos of your great-great-great-great-grandparents do you have? More importantly, how many do you want? And if your legacy collection gets passed on to future generations, that's going to be you. It's humbling, but it's helpful. I'm starting out by creating my legacy collection as a virtual collection within my catalog, like the ones I showed you. I may or may not export and create a separate and apart library for it, but I'll decide that later. For now, I can start to access these favorites and selects I have identified and use them for a variety of projects. So these are some of the ideas I have for projects that I want to create for my legacy collection. Let's go through them. When my mother passed away last year at the age of 99, I was able to create a short video of her life. I used portions of the video interviews I had done some years ago and included old photos of her my grandfather took back in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, where she grew up. Here's a little snippet of it that will give you an idea of what can be done.
I loved going to Coney Island, and it wasn't only for the frankfurters and French fries, but we loved going on all the rides. They had wonderful rides, and one of the best ones was you get into a little car and you could drive it, and it was so much fun. We would bump into each other, and that was the trick, was to get as many bumps as you possibly could, and everybody would be screaming and laughing, and it was really a lot of fun. I loved growing up at the boardwalk because we had the beach right there, we had the ocean right there, and we could run around. And
My idea is to create video chapters for each family member: my son, my wife, my parents and grandparents. And in addition to the videos and photos, I would add some records, perhaps artwork, or whatever was relevant to their story. The end result would be video chapters for my family that could be looked at in totality or individually. I really do think they tell the stories so well. I am also in the process of scanning and digitizing the analog photos, home movies, and documents that I have accumulated. This is obviously so critical, as all these will be needed to tell my complete family history, but also to make sure they're preserved. All these items are subject to fading and brittleness, and the only way to ensure their archivalness is to digitize them. This will also give me the opportunity to clean them up and restore them so I can print them for a few uses I have in mind. Growing up, I was surrounded by photos of me and my family, and these prints were in picture frames hanging on the walls or on bookshelves, and they also populated the refrigerator. I think I know my life story best from looking at that fridge every day. The photos we see on a daily basis, these are the images we form an emotional connection to. So I know that this will be the same for my son growing up. We have framed prints scattered around the house, but I'm intrigued by the idea of a picture wall with a number of our favorite photos all together in a uniformly framed fashion. This is a mock-up of one I'm making. I don't think there is anything that ingrains memories as well as pictures on a wall or on the fridge. We also had a number of photo albums in our house, which we would drag out on the holidays when I was growing up. Now, I found the prints in old albums faded and got brittle faster than the prints in boxes, so I scanned these first. I plan to make new albums from the scans as well as new photos I have taken. And the great thing is that these albums can be beautifully designed around any number of subjects, people, events, vacations, or simply a span of years. Because they are printed digitally, they can be reproduced easily if needed, and additional copies can be printed to give out to other family members and friends. In doing these projects, I can access the files I need from this legacy collection I've created, as opposed to searching through them thousands and thousands of images in my catalog each time I need them. This is a rudimentary family tree I created in the Collectionaire platform, but I plan to expand it with more people and details. Collectionaire is a very unique service in that it aggregates images and videos from all sorts of different other platforms out there, and I'll put the link in at the end. But this will be part of a larger project I want to explore by making use of genealogy sites where I can find more background information on family members. There are a lot of these sites available. Their popularity has grown significantly with DNA testing and the increased interest of people to explore their ancestors. One of the best and free places to do this is the Family Search platform. It is run by the Mormon Church but contains information about everybody. And here is a ship manifest I found of my father's ocean crossing when he moved to the United States after World War II. There is an extraordinary amount of information available if you have the patience and time to explore. So that brings us to the question of what to do with all this stuff and how to pass it on. More specifically, how will my legacy collection and any digital projects I create from it exist and be accessible when I'm gone? Of course, it is possible to collect the files of photos, videos, and everything else and place it on a hard drive to pass on. Maybe keep it in a safe deposit box. But drives fail, and most media and the connections and ports those media use will become obsolete. We don't know what technology is coming and will replace current ones. It is impossible to predict. I could also place it on a platform like Google Drive or something similar, but making arrangements for payments to the account would be tricky, and how long would I have to arrange payments for? And who knows for how long they will be around or what changes they will make, so that's not a great option. But a few companies and organizations have thought about this and created products and platforms designed specifically to live past the original owner of the account. Their names kind of tell it all: permanent.org and forever.com. These are web platforms that are designed specifically for legacy collections. You pay ahead of time, and according to each site, the images and videos and other records you upload will live on, forever and permanently. This you were looking at is forever.com, and this is permanent.org. Now, you can designate who takes it over and manages the account after your passing, assumably a relative or a close friend. And within this, you can create albums for people and events, and you can write about your family history and each member if you wish. I've gotten a bit of a start with each and intend to keep going with both for now, probably choosing just one down the road. Now, there are not a lot of customizable elements to work with, but they are easy to use and each operate a bit differently in terms of upload and their back-end interfaces. Both have public profiles and allow you to control access. Forever is a company. Permanent.org is a nonprofit, and that also dictates the way they fund and ensure their permanence. You can find out more about them and the way they work on their websites. The bottom line is that both platforms are dedicated to the archiving of family histories and making them accessible for future generations. And I would bet we see more of these platforms popping up as the need to ensure digital permanence is going to be a service more and more people want. I hope describing and talking about my journey has been helpful to you and given you some ideas of how you might want to approach it and tell your family stories. And as I said in the beginning, this is a process, not an event. Start with some questions for yourself, and then you will be able to formulate the best plan for you. Well, that was my presentation. I hope it was helpful to you and gave you some ideas on how you might want to approach your family legacy and tell your family stories. And here are some of the websites I mentioned in my talk. If I can be of any help to you in your journey, please get in touch. I hope you enjoy me with my next video, which will focus on organizing and deduping my digital photo collection. Should be a lot of fun. Good luck and thank you.